It's just the time. At the end of the day, you don't stand in front of the gates of heaven and get judged on your time, but it's so much more than just the time because it motivates you day in and day out, brings out the best in your running life, in your work life.
Hi guys, I'm Nick Bester and I am a sub 220 marathoner.
I've eat, breathe, sleep sub 220 for the last 3 years and in that was 7 attempts. Part of me thought I've run 220 in 8 seconds and maybe that's all I'm ever going to achieve.
It's not sub 220, and guys, if it's not sub 220, it's not the end. Back to the drawing board, no excuses.
I've always believed in myself. I think that's one of my strongest traits is that, mentally I can be tough and push and stuff, but running taught me in a way that you need to work bloody hard day in, day out to get results. I got told by a few running coaches that you've peaked and it's just not going to happen. And it's like, don't tell me I can't do it. Like I'm going to make a point to prove to you that I can. And that's when I was like, if I don't change something, then I'm never ever going to break 220.
2:19:45. Woo! We did it, guys. We did it. Boom shakalaka. Let's go.
As soon as you put yourself out there, people have an opinion of you. And I'm passionate about helping people. And that means a lot more to me than some of the kickback or negative stuff you get out there, let's say. It's almost unlocked so much momentum now that I feel like now that I've ticked that monkey off my back, there's definitely more to come. It's almost like the harder you work for something, the sweeter it is. And I just want to take this momentum going forward with me.
Well, happy birthday, Nick Bester. Birthday week this week.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Turning the ripe old age of 35, which puts you into a new age category. Is that for running as a whole, or is 40 the actual age category where that changes, or is it just park run?
No. It's for running as a whole. So for when it comes to qualifying for races, V35, it tends to get a little bit easier qualification time. So
okay.
Hopefully running tends to get easier or will feel easier as we go along. But 35 years young, I think, being a coach myself, there's a lot of athletes out there that are performing well at older ages. So I'm not saying 35 is old, but I'm saying hopefully my peak years still lie ahead of me. So it's been an awesome birthday week. I've got a 5K race later tonight and I'm fueled by birthday cake and birthday treats. And with the new category comes motivation, stepping up into the V35 category. And I really want to see what I can do in that category. So bring it on.
I'm in the V35 category, so that's actually, I don't know if that's a good thing for me now that you have entered into this. It's going to distort all the averages going forward.
No, I think, there's definitely as we know, you get age grade rating and stuff like that. And it just sort of levels the playing field for everyone and makes everyone feel competitive. But I feel like at 35, you're as competitive as maybe in your young 20s. Maybe you lose a bit of that short distance track speed. But you can definitely still hit peak performance, especially my main goals on the marathon. So like I said, hoping my best years lie ahead of me, but it's awesome to join you in that category. Yeah,
and I guess at this age, you come with so much experience, which you certainly have within your running kind of career, spanning over 10 years now. And it seems that more and more athletes across all genres of sports are going deeper into their 30s. Some even going beyond, look at some of the Formula One drivers like Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton all becoming 40 next year and still operating at their peak performance. Do you think that's because of what, there's people are more educated, there's more science behind this now, or everyone's learning from different people?
Definitely. I think, we've got access to so much more data than ever before. And I think it's twofold. I think one, people understand the importance of recovery and body management, let's say. So for the athletes that I coach that are significantly older than me, they can still hit really good paces. They just need an extra day or an extra 2 days to recover. You can't pretty much smash it day in and day out and hammer your body like you were when you're a teenager or in your young 20s. So it comes down to body management. And the second thing is better nutrition. Nutrition and training go hand in hand. And, we've got access to a lot more than what people previously had. And whatever you put in your body, it obviously goes a long way. So, longevity in the sport is key. And like I said, hopefully the best years lie ahead of us.
Yeah, you've certainly, I think, come around to learning a bit more about the benefits of nutrition and we'll come to that and how you've kind of effectively utilize that to get those marginal gains. Let's talk a little bit about you as general. You're someone who's actually quite diverse within the running world. You're a coach. You're an Adidas Runners London Captain. You're also affiliated with Adidas as an athlete. You're the owner of Best Athletics Running Club, which is a global club. It's not fixated to one location. You're a content creator, and now you are a sub 220 marathoner.
I love that. Nice.
Which is a quest that you've been on for years, taking multiple stabs, facing failures, and I guess a lot of haters and doubters on the way to achieving something that has been a dream of yours for a long time.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it still seems a little bit surreal because I've eat, breathe, sleep sub 220 for the last 3 years, and in that was 7 attempts. And it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to pour your heart and soul into it. And I've realized that it's almost like the harder you work for something, the sweeter it is. And I've always got to the start line 100% believing, because if you believe 99.9%, then that 0.1% of dart's going to come out in that last sort of, 10Ks where it counts and mess with you. So I think to, reload so many times and go for it so many times. And then obviously, my marathon before I broke 220, so Manchester, I ran 2:20:40, which was the slowest in the last sort of 5 attempts. And a part of me thought, I've got 2 kids now, I'm focusing massively on the business. My time is tighter than ever. I'm aging. Like, I've run 2:20 in 8 seconds, and maybe that's all I'm ever going to achieve. And I think I've always believed in myself. I think that's one of my strongest traits, is that, mentally I can be tough and push and stuff. But for the first time this year, I really started doubting whether I could actually do that, and, whether 2:20:08 was going to be where I peaked. So yeah, to put in the work to get over the line was just awesome. I knew I could do it. I just didn't know if I was willing or could sacrifice enough in order to get there. But I said, I don't know how many more attempts I'm going to have. So really prioritize training more than ever. And to do it with 2 kids meant double as much. And I think it's almost unlocked so much momentum now that I feel like, now that I've ticked that monkey off my back, there's definitely more to come. And I just want to take this momentum going forward with me. So yeah, it's really lifted my spirits, and it was so sweet to get over the line. But yeah, like you said, it's I started putting myself out there about 4.5 years ago, in the hope to help inspire people from what I've learned. I've never been the most talented athlete. If you look at I'm a lot bigger than the people I compete against.
You're a stockier kind of. You're
100%.
tall and stocky.
Yeah,
that's your figure.
Exactly.
And a traditional kind of long distance marathon runner is very slim.
Exactly. Exactly.
Not a lot of muscle.
Yeah. No. When I'm in the elite starts, like you could see some pictures where I'm behind Kipchoge, let's say, I look like I'm out of place there, basically. And I think it's just from my early years. I've been running for 11 years, but before then, I was eating takeaways, drinking, gymming. I was living a normal student life, let's say, not an athlete life. So I feel like I'm trying to transform my body from then still. But at the same time, I've always been under the sort of philosophy that you need to fuel hard, train hard, run hard. So I've always fueled hard. I've never sort of like calorie counted or try to get, as light as possible to perform at optimal levels, but, risk injury and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just really helped me remain injury free over the last sort of 5.5 years, which has been awesome. And
do you think you could become that skinny runner if you chose to go down that path?
I don't actually know. I don't know, because when it comes to training, I'm super disciplined. But when it comes to nutrition, I'm disciplined to a point, but I don't think I'd be disciplined enough to actively not eat if I'm hungry type thing. Okay. So like I said, I've never calorie counted, and I've just, sometimes when you train a lot, you get burning hungry and you just consume a lot and everything. In order to get to that lighter weight, it's simple. I'd have to have a calorie deficit for a substantial period of time. And I don't know if I'm disciplined enough to actually do that sacrifice.
That's interesting. There's a very human element to be like, okay, yeah, I want to be fast, but there's a limit to how far I want to take that, because I also want to enjoy the rest of my life. And it's not all about running and fast times. It's about achieving what I can achieve in the moment, in the now, but there's going to be a limit to how far I push things.
Yeah, for sure. So to put into perspective, I'm 76 kilograms at the moment. I'm 6'1", and like I said, I don't think there's many or anybody in the sub 220 field that's probably over sort of 65 or so. So let's say I'm at least 10 kgs heavier.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, and I think, look, weight and nutrition and running, it's a very sensitive topic in the running world. And I actually encourage us to talk about it more because, it's so common for people to get diagnosed with RED-S and have negative calorie intakes and, eventually get stress fractures, unhealthy bone health and stuff like that. So it's very important that we speak openly about these things. And to be honest, you're never going to see a 2:02 marathoner or the world's best weighing 75 kilograms. That's just not going to happen. So of course there's an element of, you need to be like super lean and have a small body fat percentage to be the world's best, let's say. But for where I am in my life in the sub-elite category, let's say, and, running is as much for my mental and physical health, and I do it for those benefits. And, performance running is just a bonus. So that's why I'm not prepared to go say shave off 5 or 6 kilograms, but who knows what I'd be capable of if I did it. I don't know if we'll ever get there. But yeah,
I think we'll talk about this a bit later about kind of where you want to take your limits of your running and how far you want to push things in your life. And clearly the nutrition is kind of an important part of your life, and eating, a lot of good food is something that you take good pleasure out of. And that's not something you're willing to sacrifice in order to get, an extra few minutes of marathon time. There's other things which we'll come to later. Just on this topic at the moment, while you brought it up, I do often see a lot of the athletes on TV racing at the Olympics, men and women, and I won't name names, but they do look unhealthy as a human being. They're probably very efficient runners and very fast and effective runners. But a lot of me worries that that's not a great image that is portraying to certain people who aspire to be like them, who want to try and find their own marginal gains in their life and feel like they have to look that way to their own detriment of their health. What are your thoughts on that?
For sure. You know what? I would classify myself as a sub-elite. So I'm obviously around a lot of elite and professional athletes, but I wouldn't classify myself as a professional athlete. I'm definitely not. But the professional athlete life, one, it's not nearly as glamorous as people think. Yes, when you win a race in a big stadium, it's awesome and you get the recognition, but there's not that much money in running, let's say, and in endurance running. So to do well, you really have to be the cream of the crop and right on top. And yeah, you know what, number 2 is that you just need to learn as much as you can from the world's best, but we're at their level, marginal gains are absolutely everything. And, they ride the wave of breaking, and often they'll get injured and break fairly often. And you can almost understand, when it's their job. So I think you got to try and take the good bits from it and use that in your training. But it's a dog-eat-dog world in the professional athlete life, let's say. Everything's marginal gains. You watching absolutely everything. I mean, I know I spoke to an athlete the other day that's sort of in the professional running space, let's say, but didn't even qualify for the Olympics type thing. So really good, but not the world's best. And for 60 days in the build up to their race, they're sleeping in a different bedroom to their partner because they're worried they might get sick. They're cooking their own food. They're not eating the food that the rest of the family is eating. And there's so much sacrifice and stuff in the back end we don't see in professional athletes that actually goes into it.
Okay. We'll come to this as well again about your family life and how you integrate that within your own world of training. But I suppose I want to take these things back to the very beginning, because even though you have made running a lifestyle and a life for you, it was something that you took to really badly initially when you first, much like many other people's journeys into running, you found it incredibly hard work.
I still do. Running is hard. No, honestly, running is hard. I think it gets less hard as you go along, and the more you snap into that routine. But I wouldn't say it's easy. There's very rarely easy running. It's hard for all of us.
What got you to your first run?
My wife got me into it initially because at the time she was my girlfriend, and we supported her parents doing the Comrades Marathon. It's an ultra marathon in South Africa. A 90-kilometer road ultra marathon. It's quite a beast. And we're up at 4 a.m. At that time, I was waking up probably at 8 or 9 in the morning. So 4 a.m, I was pretty pissed off I think I was about 20 years old as a student, thinking oh my word, the stuff we do to impress our partners' parents, let's go and support them on this race. So, woke up grumpy, got to sort of the halfway point of the race where we were supporting, and the leaders came through, and there was a helicopter in the air, and there was such a buzz to it. And I just remember getting like shivers and thinking, this is incredible. Like I even get shivers when I think of it now. And it's not such a big thing, but to me it was. I was just like, this is insane what these people are doing. And it was like a calling almost. So we were like, okay, that we are inspired. We have to do this one day. That was in 2010. So we committed to doing it in 2014, which was 4 years later.
To do Comrades.
The
90 kilometers.
90 kilometers, yeah.
Road marathon, yes. Which is not a kind of first race that you might decide to do, not being a runner.
Very true, very true. But having grown up in South Africa, it's like almost a normality.
It's like the London Marathon here, right?
Yes.
It's like the things that as a runner is kind of stamps.
Yeah. So it's changed a little bit now with Cape Town Marathon being more popular. But as a runner in South Africa, if you're a decent runner, you do Comrades. Like it's what you do. So coming this side, I realized how crazy and abnormal and almost unhealthy that race is for your body. But yeah, pretty much like going back to what we did. It's just what you did. You're like, I'll do Comrades. So yeah, it was brutal. And then 2013, so 3 years later came around. We were like, it's Comrades, in 6 months' time. And then I did my first marathon about 7 months before, so just before the year before. And I didn't really train properly for it. I knew absolutely nothing compared to what I know now. I think I did, a 20K run and a 30K run, and that last 10Ks was absolutely brutal. Like it always is, but I think in your first one, if you haven't trained properly, you'll know what I'm talking about. Nothing can quite prepare you for that. But it was a downhill marathon, thank goodness. I weighed 87 kilograms at the time. Like I said, I'm now like 75 or so. So I was about 12 kilograms heavier than what I am now. So I needed those downhills. They helped, that's for sure. That burn towards the end was real. And I think, I finished and my time was 3 hours and 17 minutes. And it got a lot of people by surprise. They were just like, we didn't think you had that in you. And I was like, I didn't know what to expect either. And then I thought, okay, I've kind of surprised myself here. What if I train a little bit harder? What am I capable of? And 11 years later, speaking to you now, I'm in the exact same mindset. Like, if I train a little bit harder, what can I be capable of? So yeah, it hasn't changed. And, I think year on year, there was big gains in the beginning, like 5 minutes per marathon, pretty much year on year for the first 9 years. And then it's sort of like every second from year on in is like a big gain for me.
Okay, so you started your first marathon at a 3:17, which is a remarkable first ever kind of marathon time. Well done.
Thank you.
So after Comrades Marathon, you now had your sights set on bettering yourself as a runner. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so what did you do in that? Or how did your life change? Because you were this guy who couldn't get up before 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly you were inspired to run your first ever marathon, your ultra marathon. You ran a 3:17, but then you're like, hang on, if I take this seriously, I can get better and better and better. So what happened in your life there?
Do you know what? I think I'm very competitive, mainly with myself. So like I said, I put that time on the board and I thought, if I train harder, where could I go to? So that was motivational enough for me to keep training day in and day out to see what I could be capable of. Obviously, when you build up to a race like Comrades, you finish Comrades and you say that's your last one, you're never doing it again. And as you know, you get a bit of post-race depression into the next one and then go again. I think the competitive side in me sort of helped motivate me to just try and improve. But apart from that, I got into it with my wife, Taryn, or like I said at the time, she was my girlfriend, and we sort of held each other accountable, and we had a training partner that met us at 4:45 every single morning in South Africa. You run early there because it gets hot. He rang our doorbell, got us out of bed, got us doing the training. Look, I think from when I started running, I've been pretty I hold myself accountable and I show up, but it definitely helped in those early years having someone ring your doorbell like day in, day out relentlessly to just get you into that training routine. So that's where it started.
What did you learn about the fact that once you were out of bed and you could run and you were doing the run, what you could achieve?
I think my progression was a bit better than most. And then I thought, okay, I could have more potential than what I think I have. Let's stick with this and see. So, there's like inter-club awards for races, for Comrades, and you start winning those and then you think, okay, cool, you're pretty decent. So that's where it sort of started. But I mean, when I think back to, I went from 3:17 to maybe 2:56 to 2:48 to 2:42. in my first 4 years. So at 2:42, if you said to me one day you're going to run at 2:19, there's no ways I would have believed you.
Was it your second marathon that you broke 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've learned about you, which I didn't believe was a true stat, but if it is, and you've confirmed this with me, is that since that moment, with your second marathon when you broke 3, every marathon you've run since has been a sub 3.
Yep.
But it's not just every marathon you've run; it's the number, which is astounding. It's in the region. You're not quite sure exactly how many. It's in the region of potentially 100 marathons where you've consistently broken 3 hours, sub 3, every single time.
Yep. That's it. So, whilst
you know how frustrating that is for so many runners who are looking, especially the men who are looking to break that 3, which is like the men's kind of like, gold standard of, you're a good runner if you can break 3 in a marathon. And you've done this over 100 times consecutively.
Yeah. I think, you know what, it's just a sign of consistent training, let's say. Once you get under sub 3 hour shape and you continue to train and level up, then it becomes easier and easier and easier. And obviously, like I'm at that stage now where I paced London 2 years ago to a sub 3. And there was, a whole so many runners. It's nice when I don't give a full send myself to help others achieve their goals. But I want to keep this record of sub 3 marathons going, let's say. So I'm kind of not prepared to go over 3 until I really have to. The day will come. But I must say, like at 2:59, it feels in a race situation, it's doesn't feel comfortable. It's a little bit sore, let's say. Whereas if I pace at 2:45 at New York like I did, or at London, that feels so much more natural to me. And it's incredible what you can build your body to. Like I would say, if I'm doing a full send at around 2:20, I'm pushing 10 out of 10. I'm hurting. I'm facing those demons. It's like relentless. It's you've trained years to try and sustain that. If I'm running now at a 2:44 marathon, I would say effort levels for me are probably like 2 out of 10. And it's just way easier than your longer marathon runs that you do in training. You're going slower, it's a flatter route, and there's people and fuel. It's like incredible. So I get as much satisfaction of those 2:44 runs helping people break 2:45 as I do a full send. Obviously, I'm competitive, so I want to keep pushing that full send side. But like I feel like that's like the reward and the dessert for all the hard work that goes into it. You've built your body into this phase that you can actually enjoy a 2:44, whereas in my third year of running, that was my PB and I was absolutely broken. So yeah, it's something I'll continue to do every year, is have goal marathons and other marathons where I enjoy and help others achieve their goals.
It's remarkable that you say that a 3 hour marathon is actually harder than a 2:45.
Yeah, definitely for me. It's more, the pace is
the
more
style
unnatural.
of the run that you're having to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to, it's just not a natural thing.
At a 3 hour marathon, my heart rate average is probably around 120-ish or so, whereas at 2:44, it's probably at around 130. And a 130 flow for me is a lot nicer and more smooth.
This is just how conditioned you are as a runner, that you actually can't run slow. Like, you're so conditioned to be running fast and efficiently running fast that the slower run is just putting you completely out of stride, I imagine.
100%. Like, I'll be honest, a 6-minute K pace is a lot harder and more sore than a 4-minute per K pace. And that's just from years and years of pushing that boundary.
This helps explain some of my friends who are fast runners who just cannot run slow. And now I can see why. It's just they're just conditioned to be at that pace, and that's just their natural flow. And it's interesting to hear that's from you as well. Just jumping in briefly to say, if you've got this far, you're probably a fan of the show. And it would be great if you wouldn't mind confirming that love by following or subscribing to this podcast. It takes just one click from you, but it really does make a huge difference in getting more people to find this show. Thank you. Whilst you were on your kind of running marathon journey, you were living the corporate life as a banker, but your times were getting faster and faster. And there's a time, I don't know what time it was that you got in particular, but it suddenly became like you were the go-to runner in the office for advice. Is that correct?
Definitely. I felt sorry for the team around me. So I worked at a bank called Investec Bank, and it's a very sporty and active bank. Lots of runners within that bank. And I pretty much, because I did 3 comrades in my early years in South Africa, I finished with to get a silver, you got to do under 7:30. So my first one, I got 3 silvers in a row. I went 7:14, 6:58, 6:28. So my third year doing 6:28 at 26 years old. I think I was one of the youngest in the top 100. I came 73rd or 74th overall. So for a lot of people, it was like, this guy knows what he's doing. So in South Africa, people just spoke to me about running. Then I moved across to the UK. And for my first couple of months here, people didn't really know me or my running times. And, it was like a little bit of a break from all the running engagements within the office. And then I did London Marathon. I had like Achilles niggles and I wasn't in shape, but I got a last minute entry. And I ran a 2:42, which I surprised myself because I'd only done marathons in South Africa before then, where it's hot, hilly, high altitude. London was like, are you joking? It was like cheating for a marathon almost. It was, cooler, flatter, support I'd never seen before. So I had adrenaline the whole way. I was like, this is awesome. So to put in a 2:42, it's sort of like people in the corporates, in my office space, it's a decent marathon time. I think every year there's faster and faster runners. This was probably about 8 years ago. So that sort of triggered like, Nick knows what he's talking about. So if you need a bit of running advice, come speak to Nick. And I suppose that's almost like the start of where everything started, is that eventually runners were just seeking advice and they would come up to me and speak to me about running and what to do and so on. And my team was a team of 12 all around me. And all they heard was people coming up and speaking about running chat all the time. And they definitely were not runners. So I felt so bad for them around me, but I was so passionate about, sharing it and helping others and stuff that's just sort of the natural flow that it took.
This is the classic story of someone with, I guess, an office job that kind of is doing this to kind of, that's the money side of your life and, bringing that stable kind of income in. But in the outside your 9 to 5 was like your run training, your races, and that was what was your passion and what inspired you to kind of live life to its fullest. And then they kind of merged in some sense, because now you were kind of this unofficial run coach within your office because people were seeing you be such an incredible runner. And that kind of got to a point where you thought, hang on, I could do something with this.
Yeah, exactly that. So I managed to kick on from there at 2:42. I got all the way down to 2:29.50. So I broke sub 2:30, full-time corporate. I'd been in the corporate world for 10 years as a private banker. And I think to make more gains from there would be very marginal because you're desk bound. Okay, COVID's changed things now and there's standing desks and stuff. But before then, there wasn't many of that. So you'd sit at your desk for, 8 to 10 hours a day. That hugely affects your running form. And obviously, it's intense time-wise. You're traveling an hour to work, traveling an hour back. I was often running to work, back from work. But every single lunch break, literally everyone, I would spend it running. I would zip down, get changed, go smash a loop to Big Ben around the Royal Parks and come back, shower, sometimes, be a little bit sweaty at my desk and eat at my desk and carry on the day. And I found that, one, it made me so much more productive. Getting out for that hour, I was way more productive in my day, let's say. And two, it was what I needed to do in order to, train whilst being full-time. So by the time I got down to 2:30, it's sort of more people were seeking advice, let's say. And the people that I was giving advice to were helping other people. So eventually the way it worked was that one of the ladies, I wrote a training guide for her. She was going to go to a coach and get a plan. And I was like, don't worry, I'll help you. I knew what to do just from experience and, just years and years of trialing different things. In my mind, it was very clear, but in a lot of other people's, it wasn't. So I was like, it's obvious. And, she was like, but it's not obvious. I was like, okay, cool. So I put it in a Excel spreadsheet for her. She wanted to pay me. She was going to pay, a coach like £100 to do the plan. And I was like, no ways, you my mate. Like, here you go. Then she started performing quite well. In the running world, we tell each other, word of mouth spreads. So her friends then came to me. So I helped a couple of her buddies, still not charging. And then after about, 5 or 6 people, I was like, I've got a full-time private banking job. I'm trying to run sub 2:30 marathons. Already I don't have time, but I love doing these training plans. I was doing it like, after hours and stuff like that, but it's actually now consuming my time. So I need to start charging. And people wanted to actually pay. People were like, I don't expect it to be free. So that was the first time I started charging. I charged a very, very low fee originally. And yeah, I would say in the space of about 4 to 5 months, it went from 6 people to about 30 people. And then at 30 people, there's no ways you can have a full-time job, coach 30 people, and perform to the best of your abilities. You're just burning way too many candles at different ends. And then that was at the same time that COVID hit. And yeah, I thought, you know what, it was scary for me to take the risk, because I'd only been in the corporate world for 10 years, and had COVID not hit at that time, I think eventually I would probably be doing what I'm doing. I would like to think so, but it kind of, gave me that kick up the butt that I needed to try and risk it. And it was super scary. Like, one of the scariest things I've ever done was leaving what I was used to for 10 years and trying to make it by yourself, because now it's in your own hands. Like, there's not that safety of, you don't feel like working too hard today, but you'll still get your salary.
There's no safety net at all.
No safety net at all. And it's completely up to you. And, the first year was a real dark place and a struggle.
How did you kind of process making that initial decision, that initial step? What was it? Was it just as COVID? Or was your wife willing to support you? Was there a conversation that said, like, let's just give this a go for a short term and see?
There was definitely conversations. And a lot of people, I think, look at my journey now and think, okay, cool, I want to go all into this, but you can't just go all into this, because it needs to be a transition. Otherwise it's far too risky. So by the time I went to call it all in, I had 30 clients already, and I knew that I was, good at what I did, and I'm passionate about it and what I wanted to do. But the conversations, with my wife was that, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens. Look, at the same time, there was redundancy packages as well. And that was like the golden ticket that I needed, because I was like, okay, there's 3 or 4 months pay.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, if I don't go now, I'm never going to give it a go. So that was when I went for it. And like I said, I think, clients wise, I needed to at least double the clients that I had then to match what I was earning. And for a full year, some of the athletes that I was coaching lost their jobs due to COVID, and the races weren't going ahead. But then some people were getting into running due to COVID. And I suppose people tend to get a personalized coach for races and to try and perform better. But, it did bring up a few opportunities of, like, people didn't really know what to do. So I would say it had probably an adverse effect for the first year. I didn't grow and I didn't shrink. But after a year of trying, I was at the point of about to hand my CV into other corporates.
You were hustling though at the time. I've heard you say you were contacting schools, working out if you could be like a PE teacher, does all these little short-term
That's exactly
things.
It. Yeah. I was
just trying to find something that would
no,
keep
for
you
sure.
going.
And that was only 3 and a bit years ago, basically 3 years ago. I was at dinner with my wife, and I kind of like broke down, and I felt like a failure. I was like, I've given it a full year and I haven't grown. And, I've written blog post after blog post. You try so hard, like posting every day, sharing informative content, but
you're trying to create a brand, right?
Exactly.
The Nick Bester brand.
If you don't have look, people are funny in the way that, we follow. If you go on YouTube and there's a video with a lot of views, you're going to watch it, right? If you go on YouTube and there's a video with no views, it could be an amazing video, but you're not going to watch it because it doesn't have that credibility factor.
Same with the follower content as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't have that credibility factor. Like, yes, I was a sub 230 marathoner, but lots of people were. And I didn't have a big following. I was probably producing better blog posts then because I had more time than what I am now almost. But no one was reading it. Well, not no one, but very few people were reading it. And I wasn't getting the traction. But yeah, so I contacted, at that stage I was desperate. I didn't want to go back to the corporate world because I was like, let me just give it a little bit more time. Like, I truly believe. And I contacted schools to be a PE teacher. And I remember considering being a PE teacher. I had to cycle, like, it was about 16Ks one way, 16Ks the other way, to earn like just above minimum wage for 2 to 3 hours. And I nearly signed it because I was, desperate at the time to just give myself a little bit more time. So yeah, it was a tough year.
What happened that kept you going? When did you strike?
2 things happened. One is that the people that I'd been coaching for a year started doing quite well, and people could then see the results. So you don't just get better overnight, but over a period of time, people are like, okay, Tom's improved. What's he doing? Okay, this is his coach. Let's get in touch. So that helped quite a lot. And then
these were all little seeds that you planted.
Exactly.
And then finally starting to grow.
100%. And you need a bit of luck. Like you make your own luck, but I got 2 fairly big influencers that joined me for coaching that I didn't offer discounted rates. It was just, by chance that they got in touch with me for coaching. And they were influencers that posted about their journey every day. And they were like, this coach, has got me to this PB. And they started smashing it. They had followings of probably about 40 or 50,000. And once they started doing well, then the applications started flocking in. So I went from getting maybe 1 or 2 applications a month to like probably about 7 or 8 a day. It was crazy. And that's when, from that day onwards, it just transformed.
It's almost like a bit of luck came your way, but it wasn't luck because you had laid down this foundation and you had in a position where you were willing to accept it and waiting for that right person that would just cause that inflection point. And it's so often that people just hustle and don't see any progress or any results. And they get demotivated by that and they just want to stop and quit. But they don't realize that all that time that they've been hustling is actually building that base. And that base can grow much stronger if you just keep on going from that point onwards. And you never know when that inflection point is going to come. But you have to be in that position to be ready for it and keep putting yourself out there and keep hustling.
Yeah.
And that's what I really respect about you, is that you were someone who just fully believed in yourself, and you were waiting just for the right kind of cocktail to happen that would just give you that little bit of growth. And then as soon as it could grow, you were then, okay, I'm going to ride this ship. I know exactly what I need to do from here.
Yeah. Look, looking back at it, I think it's almost, it's easy to speak about it now because I know what's happened from that point. But if you had to get me on this podcast back then, I was probably in quite a bad place, to be honest, at that point in time. And I'd at least built this foundation, written all these blog posts, and had a foundation that when the snowball effect came in and the exponential growth that social media comes with it, things were in place that, now that blog post, instead of getting 10 views, it was getting hundreds of views. And I'd built that up. And I think if you start from the other end and you have a lot of people and don't have time to build that foundation, then it probably can, almost come crashing down. So it's almost like running taught me in a way that you need to work bloody hard day in, day out to get results. And I think one of the hardest things for me is that, and you touched base on it earlier, is that I started putting myself out there, and I'd never done that before. All right. It's like, it's a weird feeling to a lot of, people that are close to you, your partner, your friends, because all of a sudden you're this influencer, and, some of your buddies give you a lot of like a hard time because they're like, are you some kind of influencer guy now? And, as soon as you put yourself out there, people have an opinion of you. And I'm passionate about, helping people. And that means a lot more to me than some of the kickback or negative stuff you get out there, let's say. But I'm actually quite a sensitive person. I think, we almost all are. So you can read 100 amazing comments and one bad comment, and that negative comment, can stick with you and dwell on you and mess with you and stuff like that. So as soon as I put myself out there, it was a decision to just be super thick-skinned and look at the goodness, look at the people that you're helping. Because, it's so easy for people to hide behind a computer and try and attack you and bring you down. And there's 2 types of people that really support you and bring out the best in you. And a lot of that is the athletes that I coach, the club, the people that support me. And then there's the other type of people that are, competitive, that just want to beat you, that want to bring you down. And, those people are always going to be around. And as long as you try and always focus on the good, and I always say as long as the negative is less than, 5 or 2% or whatever the case is, then you're going to do a phenomenal job. But yeah, it's been probably, top 3 hardest things is to deal with any negativity that comes your way and not take things personally. Something that's so much easier said than done, but something that I just actively make a conscious plan to do.
It can be so difficult because you are trying to build a brand and you put yourself out. And in this modern day, it's putting yourself on the internet. and the internet comes with a lot of positivity, but also comes with a lot of negativity. And even though that can be a small proportion of the kind of feedback that you get, it's something that hits the hardest. And we all see this in life. But hate is just jealousy in disguise. And I think people are seeing your successes and just being very bitter about that. And so it is a cheap shot just to say, a bad thing about you and what you're doing, or anyone else on the internet if they're trying to, and it's just, they're jealous. Why should someone else have the limelight? But they're the ones that are hustling and making that happen. And they're the people who are saying those negative things aren't the ones that are trying to put themselves out there in the limelight. And
exactly. You know what? Like I say, there's two types of people. People that'll support you and bring out the best in you, and you just got to try and surround yourself by that. And then people that'll get jealous and try and bring you down. And I try and use that as motivation when you do, come across a negative feedback. And, it's almost like, okay, I remember that one and try to prove it wrong. But it's very, very important to not overthink those things, and to not let them affect you, because then they really can destroy you. And I've seen it so many times. And, it's a big thing in the running influencer space, unfortunately, where, people were putting themselves out there, but it's so easy to attack them, and they take things personally, and then they just decide, actually, it's not worth it for me. I'm getting personally attacked. There's, websites where people are talking about me and so on and so forth. And it's a shame, because then they stop sharing their journey. All the positives that came along with it are now gone. So, yeah, I think you've got to just be pretty thick-skinned. And one thing I've sort of made a golden rule when I started is that, that you're going to come across trolls, and just never give them recognition, because as soon as you start fighting with a troll or someone who dislikes you, you're not going to win that battle. It's like, if in life you choose to spend time with your friends, you don't choose to spend time with people that you don't want to spend time with. So just ignore it, move on. Don't try and convince that. But yeah, you know what I think breaking sub 220, since then there's probably been very, very little negativity, touch wood, thank goodness. And I think it almost was like, okay, I had a bit of an issue with this guy, but man, he worked so hard that he's earned my respect now, type thing.
We're coming on to that. I'm really excited to be talking about that in a minute.
Cool.
Let's just move on from your kind of stages in your career, kind of setting yourself off to be a run coach, hustling and fighting through the kind of adversity you faced in the first year, and then realizing that you could do more with your run coaching, with the setting up Best Athletics, an athletics club in your name.
Yeah. So, you know what? I've always been fairly entrepreneurial minded, let's say. Maybe that's from being in the corporate world, but I think I always try and inspire to improve, like running, basically. I keep making a reference, I've learned so much from running to work hard and try and inspire to be better. So with that came a big decision for me as well, was when Best Athletics, the birth of Best Athletics, let's say, because I'd then started getting a lot of coached athletes, and I brought on another coach because, I couldn't handle the numbers myself. Then I had this community that I'd created, and there was maybe like 100, 150 people in this community. But I thought, okay, it's, should I register a running club? Because these people are looking for a club to join. But with that, it's risky, because I could, eat into my own business, because then why would they pay the premium for coaching if they can just join the club, let's say? So I knew by starting a club, it would open the club up to a lot more people joining the Best Athletics Club. But a part of it was that people had joined the coaching to feel that community side to it. So they might not feel like they're using the plan as much, but could do with the community. And obviously the price difference for coaching is significantly different to the club, because you're getting a coaching plan and personalized coaching. So yeah, that was a decision that took months and months and months to make. And every day I asked myself, like, is it worth it? Is it not? And one of the best things I've ever done. And took that decision. And I think with that came so much more opportunity. The coaching side of the business grew. The club side of the business obviously significantly grew. And it just shows you that, I suppose, once you start creating a great culture of people feeling like they're part of this community and bringing out the best in each other, then it's only going to go one direction from there. So yeah, that was really, really something that was a significant step into where it is today.
So Best Athletics is kind of like a new age running club. It's not necessarily affiliated to a location, particularly, even though you do kind of go to regular locations to run. But like a traditional running club that's now, you know, could be 100 or 150 years old is always like, you know, Woking, you know, Athletics Club, or, you know, or Epsom and Ewell Harriers, you know, that they're kind of like, this is our location, this is our run club, we've been doing this way for 100 years, and there are certain processes that we have to follow because it's all steeped in tradition. You've come along and you've thought, actually, you know, I've got an opportunity to kind of break the mold a bit here. So tell me a bit about why Best Athletics is a little bit different to some of the other running clubs out there.
Yeah, so you know what, it's a very new age running club, let's say. So a lot of the running clubs in the UK and in England have been around for a long time, and it's great. Like, it comes with tradition, culture, you know, like parents have run for the club and it's been in the family, and, you know, there's so many stories and stuff to come along with it. So I'm actually a second claim member of a traditional running club, yeah, and, you know, a big fan of it. But I just felt like there was definitely a big demand for like a new age club, from the point of view that people can sign up via the app. It's easy. You download the app on the App Store, you know, click a button, you're part of the club. You can sign up to England Athletics by filling in this form, and you can buy merchandise here, and you can join your teammates at this race. And, you know, like, everything's easy in front of you in one piece. With a lot of the running clubs, you kind of like got to go online, complete an application form, make proof of payment, make the payments manually, send proof of payment to the club secretary, and it's like, you know, it's very different to what we offer, and I get that, but I felt like people want, you know, quick, easy, let's get an app going, and people can sign up via the app. So that's the way it came about, and it's really proved to be fruitful. I mean, there's a big demand for that, and it's quite nice that, yes, we offer sessions in Battersea and in Manchester and potentially in more locations, but anyone can join and anyone feels part of the team. You know, they join the WhatsApp group.
Anyone in the world can join your club, basically.
Anyone in the world can join the club. We do have global members, and they're on the WhatsApp group and they feel part of the team, and they're sending selfies from, you know, a park run in Australia. And it's so cool that you feel part of the team by this community chat and this community group, rather than just stuck in one location. But I see the question you're coming from, and it does cause a lot of confusion, because people always ask, where's the club based? Because that's what happens in England. Your club is based in a certain area. And I say, yeah, we offer sessions in Battersea, but, you know, there's runners all over the UK and all over the world. So we're not based in one location, and you can join wherever you want. So that's one of the most beautiful things about it.
What was the general, was there any kickback at all when you first kind of set this up from other clubs?
Definitely. Like I say, there's two types of runners, and there's runners that'll support you and be your mate and, you know, be happy for you. And then there's runners that'll think, because it's not the norm and what they used to, like, I left this club and now I'm trying to start my own club. Like, you know, what is this guy trying to do type thing. So yeah, there was definitely a little bit of kickback, and there still is. I mean, I'm not, you know, a lot of the traditional England athletics clubs, probably a lot of them don't like Best Athletics, maybe because, you know, we're the new kids on the block. You know, the club's got over 600 members. It's doing really well, but at the end of the day, all you can do is try and be friendly, be your best. Like, you know, I'm a big fan of the running community in general and other clubs and stuff. So I can understand why Best Athletics would get kickback, but I can also understand why, you know, there's a lot of support for Best Athletics, because ultimately it's trying to encourage people to be active and bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you one of the first that's kind of disruptive in this world to say, like, actually, you know, a running club can be global, and, you know, it can be based anywhere and anyone can join? Are there any other clubs out there that you know of like that? There's
one or two, but I think what differentiates Best Athletics as well is that we officially England Athletics registered. So there are a few like running communities, let's say, maybe like, I mean, I'm not going to mention names here, but communities that are trendy, young, and, you know, attracting people from all over, whereas they're not exactly England Athletics registered. And it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it, because when I first registered Best Athletics with England Athletics, I got in touch with a couple of other coaches in the industry. I didn't know where to start. I was like, have you thought about creating a club? And they were like, yeah, you get in touch with England Athletics and basically you just don't do it, because you have to have a club constitution. You have to have, you know, 6 or 7 people as part of the club. All these, like a welfare officer,
like a committee,
founder, a treasurer, a committee, minutes of meetings. And it's like this whole massive thing that's scary. And I didn't even know where to start. And I thought, do you know what? Like, if you put your mind to something, you can do it, and dedicated a bit of time to it, you know, got a committee together, got some rules together, downloaded a template, worked off that, submitted it. There was obviously a bit of back and forth, but then, got it registered. And once it's registered, it's registered. So it took a lot of work in the beginning, but, once you officially registered and adhering to the England Athletics policies, and, we're getting 600 members affiliated with England Athletics, which is, great for them, great for us. They're giving us London Marathon entries every year type thing. So that initial stage, once again, is the hardest, but I think that's what differentiates Best Athletics as like a running community, but an official club versus either just an official club or just an official running community.
Brilliant. One of the things as well that is very different with your Best Athletics is your affiliation with Adidas, and how you can buy club merchandise directly from the Adidas store, which is so unique because so many club kits have to be bought in a batch, periodically from a certain supplier. But now through the app, you just click a link and you get onto the Adidas store, and then you can update kit drops regularly, do new designs, and you've still got the kind of traditional white and blue, but there's you can make that really fun and make that really unique and give people some excitement to be wearing something that's fresh and exciting.
Yeah. You know what? Runners love merchandise. I love merchandise. So I always say life's far too short to not run in merchandise that you want and awesome merchandise. Like, you put so much work into the sport, like, treat yourself, you know what I mean? So do you know what? The Best Athletics kit's not on the official Adidas website yet.
Oh,
we'll get there. We'll get there.
I thought that was
It's a Shopify website that we created, but we have Adidas's partners, Specialist Sport. They are couriering and shipping partners, and they do a lot of work on the back end, let's say. So they ship Adidas product to a lot of people, and then they ship our product as well. So, originally when I was a one-man band or even a two-man band in the early stage, I was going to the post office, every other day and clogging up orders, and, it was very time consuming. Whereas now I don't have the kits in a warehouse. It's in Specialist Sports, which is the division of Adidas's warehouse. So that was an absolute game changer. They deal with, the shipping and stuff like that. And I think with the volume of stuff we're moving now, that was a necessity for sure. There's no ways we could operate the way we were. But one thing that is significant is that we're the only running club that Adidas does custom kit for. And they're almost like trialing it with Best Athletics. And if it works with Best Athletics, they're going to offer it to a whole bunch of other clubs. So very soon you can go onto the Adidas website and make bespoke running kit, design it yourself, design what your club looks like, have speckles, have lines, whatever the case is, put your logo on, and then that's going to be able to purchase for your club. So I think a lot of brands, but in specific Adidas, are going more for the bespoke kit. And it's worked so well with Best Athletics, so they want to roll it out to more clubs and anyone out there.
This is something, going back now again to what can happen when you just put yourself out there and are willing to accept new opportunities. This is something that you would never have done in your office job. But by being this kind of, a freelance kind of running coach and having a business and putting yourself out there, hustling and trying to get work, you managed to get a contract with Adidas that is kind of almost three ways. It's through your club, it's you as a personal athlete, but also you are a captain for Adidas Runners London, which is the running community that's a global community, but the London base here. So it's kind of benefited you in three different ways, really. And that would never have come around if you were just, doing a side hustle of run coaching in your normal job.
Yeah.
That's something massively to celebrate, right? That's what every runner dreams of, to be attached to a big running brand like Adidas.
For sure. You know what? It's probably been the single biggest thing, apart from that boom when I was struggling. I would say that, together with Adidas supporting me and the club, has been probably the best thing that's happened in my journey to date. And, it's funny how these things come around, because I'm Adidas Runners coach and captain. And through there, you sort of meet key contacts at big events, and, you start putting yourself out on YouTube and social media, and then they start familiarizing themselves to you. And, everyone's got good ideas, and, everyone would like the support of big brands. But I think when you can start showcasing it with numbers and say, actually, we were nowhere and now we're at 500 members. Like, imagine if we had to make the kit Adidas going forward. What can we do? What will this look like, type thing? And then it makes it appealing from their point of view, because they're like, okay, cool. You're a coach for us. The natural progression almost is to support the club. And it's almost like what I've learned in this space over the years is that you can't just ask for things. If you want to get supported by brands or any campaigns or anything you do, you've got to put yourself into a position where it's like almost hard to say no to, and then pitch it to them in a way to be like, okay, cool, this is actually for a global brand like Adidas, which is incredible. Like, you know, it's probably a tiny, tiny drop in the ocean for them, Best Athletics. But for me, it's the biggest thing in my life, and it's helping us grow together, and it's a start. So yeah, that's been amazing. And you know, they support the club, they support me in my personal capacity, they support the merchandise. So yeah, it's really cool. And the brand is just growing. The Best Athletics and Adidas brand, it's almost like one now. And it's really been, you know, great for both parties. So something I'm proud of and can't wait to see where it goes in the future.
And a new venture of you is launching into like a race series as well with them. Yes,
exactly that. So I took on the race series last year. Being a performance runner myself, I know how important racing is and how much of a demand there is for races. And at these days, there's like, people can't get into the big races. You know, races are overpriced and stuff like that. And I just wanted to make more races on the calendar, predominantly at Battersea Park, because it's quick, fast, you know, it's England Athletics certified, counts on your power of 10 and is official and stuff like that at a good price, with good value for money. And Adidas has come on board and they're supporting that as well. And last year we did 4 races. This year we're going to do 5 races. And it's definitely something I'm going to focus on even more going forward. It's so rewarding giving runners the opportunity to race and seeing the satisfaction of people getting PBs at a race and event that you put on. The first one was an absolute headache to organize, and I thought never again. But once you do it once, it's just sort of, you know, rinse and repeat. It gets easier and easier and easier. And a lot of satisfaction to come out of that. So something I'll focus on more going forward.
Speaking of races, we need to talk about your journey to a sub 220. So take us back in time to when you thought you could break 220. When was this kind of inkling that you wanted to try and go for it?
So I ran 229 and then I went full time into running coaching, let's say. And then COVID hit and there were no races for a while, but I was training quite well. And because I wasn't desk bound and could be more flexible with training, I felt like I was starting to level up quite nicely. I think a massive thing is that I did 16 weeks straight of hill repeats. I remember making like a point to do it. And I felt like that just transformed my running in so many ways. So then eventually sort of like about when you could start organizing like group activities and stuff, there was an elite race called Cheshire Elite Marathon. I think you needed like a sub 230 to qualify. So I probably just snuck in there. And I was really hoping to break 225. And that would have been obviously a significant chunk of 229. And I ran that and I ran it in 224.04. So just over 224. And that was like a race where it doesn't happen often, but where you really exceed your expectations. Because I had been running for a long time, I know what shape I'm in, and I was probably on borderline 225. So to, you know, go under by a minute and feel strong, I was like, we can kick on from here. Like, this is amazing type thing. But obviously from 224 to 220, it's a big jump. Like, it's a much bigger jump than 229 to 224.
Yeah, the closer you get to, you know, the 2 hours, it's harder and harder to get.
Definitely. You know, each minute it becomes huge. So I thought, what's the natural progression from 224? Like, do you go for like a 222? Like that, like you're so close to 220, you've got to try go for it type thing. So that's where I started getting obsessed with this 220.
It's the next magic number, right?
It was just the next thing.
Yeah.
Like from 224, 223 doesn't sound the same.
No.
Sub 220. Where to from here? So I pretty much, I think it was about a year later, and there was London Marathon that went ahead.
This was when it was happening later in the year in October, was it?
Yes, exactly. And I'd kind of got into better shape than I was when I was at 224, but I wasn't in sub 220 shape. And I was like, but I got to go for it. Like, I've got nothing to lose type thing.
Yeah, who knows what will happen on race day, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I exceeded my expectations when I ran 224. Maybe that'll happen at London and I'll break 220, you know? So I probably didn't hit the numbers in training that I needed to hit, but I was like, let's live life. And I sort of made like an impromptu decision with like a week to go that I'm going for it. And I actually got a little bit sick in the few days before that.
When you made that decision, did you believe in yourself that you could in that moment?
I would say in the other builds, I 100% believed. In that build, I was like, there's an outside chance, but let's go for it. And when there's an outside chance, but let's go for it, 99 times out of 100, it doesn't kind of play in your favor if you know what shape you're in your limitations. And that day definitely did not play in my favor. So yeah, slightly under the weather going into that.
So what happened there?
So I got into a group of strong runners that I knew from, the running scene that you race in week out that were probably 220 marathoners. And we went through halfway in 69.50. So just under 220 pace. But the first half of London, the first 5Ks is a little bit net downhill. So the first half is a little bit quicker than the second half. And I got through halfway in under 220 pace, feeling like I'm feeling the burn, but I actually think this could be possible. But I could feel I wasn't firing on all cylinders. And when you feel it from, the halfway mark, then you're in trouble. So honestly, like a few kilometers later, and I hit the biggest wall I've ever hit in my road running races to date, in any race I've ever done. And I just remember thinking like, I just wanted to throw in the towel and quit. Every time I was like, you don't need to do this yourself. I come across this thought sometimes in a race, but not as regularly and as strong as that one. So yeah, second half, I finished that race in 2:33 or 2:34.
2:33, yeah.
2:33. Okay, which is obviously still very respectable, of course. But I mean, I'd lost 14 minutes in the second half, and I was just in a horrendous place. And that was a massive humbling experience for me. I finished and I just lay under a tree. I had no energy, and it was actually quite scary in a way. I probably shouldn't have raced, but I felt good enough to give it a go, but I was definitely not firing on all cylinders. So
yeah, it's always easy in hindsight to then work out, what went wrong. But at the time, you never know what's going to happen when you set off, and what the adrenaline and what the crowd can bring to you, and that extra 5% can push you through.
Yeah. So you know what? It made me mentally tougher to know that I got through that. And I felt like, and this happens to a lot of runners, that I had a really bad performance, but I had transformed my running in the training to that. So even though that race didn't go according to plan, I'd reform my body and hit levels that I knew I could do well in the future. It's just a question of which races are going to pay off.
So the next year, 2022, first on your race calendar to have another attempt was Rotterdam. How was your training block going into that one?
A lot better. So I was a lot more prepared for Rotterdam.
What made you feel that you were in a better place?
I think just from living this new life that I was, let's say, so having more flexibility and being able to get in the training necessary for 220.
Okay, it became a real big focus in your life.
Definitely. And you know what? I hit heights within this training block there that I haven't matched to this date. And it felt like...
What kind of terms? In
it felt
short
like
distances?
It felt like I could just level up so much more from there. And I haven't. And that's been a tough pill for me to swallow, I think, in a way. But I did Cambridge. So in December, my fitness was nowhere. But I had such good training from January that by the Valentine's Day, I think the 14th of February, I did a 5K PB, which is my PB today, 14:34. And I ran a lot quicker than I thought I would. And then I think 2 or 3 weeks later, I ran Cambridge half. I was hoping for a top 10 at Cambridge half. I'd done it a few times. And I found myself in the lead pack with 5Ks to go. And with 4Ks to go, there was 3 of us. And then with 2Ks to go, there was 2 of us. And I was like, there's no ways I'm losing this. Like, it was crazy. There was, so many people supporting. And I had higher heights there than I ever have before. So I was hoping to sort of come top 10 and break 68. I wanted to run 67 something. And I ended up winning the race and running 66:19. And that was like a surreal moment for me because I did not expect that. Like I got finished the line and I just broke down because I was not expecting that at all. And then I thought, okay, I've gone 14:34, 66:19. I've won Cambridge. Like,
everything is saying that this is your time.
Yes, exactly. Like, this is signifying sub 220 shape and I can level up from here.
So you ran Cambridge half. This was 3 weeks before the marathon. This is what is it?
It was about
was it 4?
6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks.
That's quite a traditional thing to do in a marathon block, is to run a half marathon race. So you said about 6 weeks before a marathon.
Yeah, so I always try and get in a half marathon race about 7 weeks before to 3 weeks before, in that range.
Yeah. Why is that? Is that just because are you running at marathon pace for that, or are you going faster than marathon pace?
No, you full sending.
You're full sending.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's key that you will have time to recover for your marathon.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's the case. I mean, did you burn out because of such a fast time that might have then affected? We'll come to what happened at Rotterdam in a bit, but
yeah. Do you know what? I think it's really good to race a half in the build up. One, because that when you do sessions, they're good, but there's nothing quite like a race effort. There's no floating, there's no breaks in between, there's no pausing. Like, it's a race effort, and you remind your body what that is all about. And two, it gives you a good indication as to what shape you're in. For example, you need to be running a 124 or 125 if you want to make a 3-hour marathon, let's say. So if you do a half marathon in 130 and you empty the tank completely, there's no ways you're going to double that and run a 3-hour marathon, unless obviously, something significant.
Because there could be a lot of people listening to this who, for them, racing a half marathon is their version of a marathon, and that completely wipes them out, and they just don't want to think about running at all. I suppose, is this coming from a place where you're going to be in a much longer training block, so you'll be very conditioned to race that half marathon and then recover? Because I get very confused thinking, my logical analytical mind is like, why would you go full send when you want to save that for marathon day, and risk maybe kind of, burning out a little bit, or maybe even injuring yourself. And that's kind of a really delicate part of this training block, is, that half marathon where you do go full send. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. No. So like I said, I think it's really important to get that race effect within your training for the half marathon distance. Recover from that and then go onto the marathon. Like, sometimes you can save, 1 or 2% within that, so that you don't fully burn out, and ensure you don't. But ultimately, if you're training properly for a marathon and you consistent and getting your training in, then a harder half marathon effort with untapered legs within training should actually be beneficial for your race, as long as it's 7 to 3 weeks out. Obviously, if it's within 2 weeks till race day, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. And what sort of like the unwritten rule of thumb kind of thing is, like, it takes a day to recover for every mile that you've raced. It's not the same for people at all. Of course not. If you're a high mileage person, you might recover quickly. If you hardly run, you're going to take a lot longer to recover. But, if a half marathon is 13 miles, then generally it might take about 13 days to recover. So if you're doing it 4 weeks out, you should be okay for your race efforts. But yeah, I feel like the fact that I was in a dog race for the win, and I'd reach higher heights and push myself way harder than I ever have before because of the situation I was in, unfamiliar territory, leading a race with 14,000 people, that's never happened. And I don't know if it will ever happen ever again.
Is that one of the first races, half marathons you've run? You've won? Sorry.
Yeah. I've won smaller races and park runs, but I've never, ever won a race with a field even more than half of that.
Amazing.
Or less than half of that.
And haven't since?
No, not even close. So
that's amazing.
So yeah, I would rank that winning Cambridge up with my sub 220 almost, because it was completely unexpected. I went, probably 2 minutes faster than I should have, and I was meant to come top 10, and I ended up winning it. And the only way I reached those heights is because I started believing I could win it. And when you run back through Cambridge, there's a city full of support, and you're the first, and there's 14,000 people behind you. And I just got this shivers and adrenaline, and I was like, let's do this. I closed in a pace that was close to my 5K PB pace for the last 5K. So that was incredible. But I think after finishing that, I would probably almost push so hard that was like, took a tiny bit out of my marathon, let's say, talking to your points. And I think the hard thing from that point onwards was, running has a way of humbling you. And I'd won Cambridge. I was on top of my running world. I was younger, and I thought I'd leveled up significantly every year until that point. And I was like, Olympics is on the cards, baby. Like, let's keep going type thing. But then, kids came along, and and things kind of changed.
Well, Rotterdam was the marathon you ran in that after the end of that training block. What happened there?
Yeah, so I was obviously in really good shape, running 66.19 at Cambridge, going into Rotterdam, and obviously that gave me a lot of confidence as well. So I was pretty confident at the start of that, potentially the fittest I'd ever been, right, at the start of that marathon. I didn't run that marathon particularly well. I started in the wrong start area and weaved through past people for the first 5Ks. So I ran a very quick first 5K split, weaving through people, burning matches, but feeling super comfortable, but you don't realize the damage that you're doing. And then what happened was got through halfway in a really good time, well under 220 pace. And I think around probably like 218 high, so around 69 flats through halfway. And then a runner in a professional runner for NN and Nike, his name's Jake Smith, he was pacing the professional lead runners in that race. He pulled off to the side and then started pacing our sub-elite group, which was also like a surreal moment to me. I was like, I looked up to this guy. I know at that time he was a 211 marathoner, so cruising sub 220 for him's chilled. And I found that he was very metronomic with his pacing. It was really good, but it was probably 1 or 2 seconds a K too fast for me. But I thought, he's doing the work, like, let's tuck in. But in hindsight, I was a little bit uncomfortable. So he ran until probably about 30 or 32 Ks, and I stuck right behind him. And I think at that stage, I was on track for like a 217 high. So we were making up time. We were getting faster and faster. And then he dropped off and my pack split up and I was in no man's land by myself. And because I'd gone over threshold too early, my morale dropped. And I was just like, sub 220 is off. I can't feel this bad and still break 220. So to be honest, that last 10 Ks, I was in a really dark place because I'd gone a little bit fast. The group wasn't there anymore. And I felt like not as bad as London, but not far off. And I was like, I'm just wasting so much time. Yeah, like my form's gone. I went from running 3:15s a K to running 3:40s a K and, completely out of control. And I thought, I'm going to end up with a not so pretty time here. And then I just, ticked off K by K. I was slowing, but at less of a rate than I thought maybe I would. And then the last kilometer, you always find something, picked it up in that finishing stretch. There's always that support, and crossed the line in 2:20 and 59 seconds. And I was like, wow, like I felt like the worst place I've ever been almost in the last 10 Ks. And I still finished with a 220 and 59. Like, yes, it's very close to 220, but at the same time, like, it's a significant PB. So I crossed the line and I think I was pretty proud of running 220 and 59 seconds.
It's the first time you had the 220 in your marathon time. And it is a remarkable time. And like you said, it's a PB. Do you think, considering what you talked about your bad start and maybe the pacing being a bit off, do you think, looking back at Rotterdam 2022, there could have been that minute there had you just run the race differently?
100%.
Because like you said, you were just on at the form of your life that year.
Yeah. Dev, you know what? If I went there with the knowledge that I have now and knowing my body how well I do now, because you learn so much in each race, then 100% I would break 220.
What would you have changed?
I would have gone a lot slower through the first 5Ks. I would have got into the right start area for sure. Like, those are small things you can control and I should have been better at. And I would have sacrificed trying to get paced by that metronomic train that was 2 or 3 seconds too fast for me, because it's inevitable I was going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
I didn't need to go that fast.
You need to concentrate on your own race and not what others are doing around you.
So there's always that catch-22, like group running is easier for sure. So sometimes, in the sub-elite world and even more so the elite world, you got to kind of go with groups. But at the same time, if it makes you uncomfortable early on, then you're way better off running your own race because you're going to pay for it later on.
Okay, well, you had another stab at the 220 the same year. This time you flew to Berlin. One of the majors. Is this your first time running Berlin? Have you run it many times before?
It's where I broke 230 at Berlin, so I ran 229.50.
So you're very familiar with the course. I think it's a good course, right? The world record was there at one point, but I think it's no longer there at the moment. But yeah, it's a fast course, isn't it?
It's a fast course, yeah.
Okay. So what did you do in preparation for Berlin? in 2022.
So yeah, Berlin 2020. So I obviously ran 2:20 and 59, and it gave me confidence to know that if I just execute a bit better, then I definitely can break 2:20. It's there. Like, I could taste it. I had a really bad last 10Ks at Rotterdam, like I said, so I just need to work on that, and I can do better at Berlin. So do you know what? I didn't hit the heights that I had in the Rotterdam block. Like I didn't, PB in the 5K or PB in the half marathon. I feel like I run way better in colder weather. And when I look at my PBs, they've all been, apart from the marathon, they've all been in like icy cold weather. Maybe because I'm a little bit of a bigger boy, let's say, it keeps the engine cool, and I just run really well when it's cool. So that build over the summer, I find a marathon build over the summer a lot harder than a marathon build over the winter. But in many ways, it's good because you're working harder and getting stronger, let's say. So yeah, I got to Berlin. I raced the big half 3 weeks before. I was hoping to go 66 or 67. I ran 69. So I ran really badly. I just came back from South Africa. I went to Comrades as a coach for a couple of the runners going there. So that kind of like, interrupted training quite a lot, let's say. But you've got to live life and do these things. So I went into Berlin less confident than what I went into Rotterdam because I'd put in a bad half marathon effort.
The numbers weren't there, yeah.
Exactly. So I ran a much more cautious race. So I got into, a good group. You're always going to get into good groups at races like that. And I went through the halfway mark in 70 minutes and 16 seconds. So knowing that I would have to negative split in order to break 2:20, but feeling very strong. And you have to feel strong if you stand any chance of negative splitting. So I was with a group till about 25Ks. The problem is that from 21 to 25, we significantly slowed. I'm talking like maybe, 5 or 6 seconds a K in my world. That's a lot. And at 25Ks, I thought, I need to leave this group now. It's a lot. It's way earlier on than I thought, but no one's kicking on from here. And there's 17Ks left. We're just losing time. So I would say at 25Ks, I was probably on track for like a 2:21:30 or maybe even 2:22. And then I decided like, I'm feeling strong. Let's go for it. And I absolutely started dropping like amazing splits for myself. So at that stage, I was 100th. I finished in 49th. So I overtook, 50 people in the last 17Ks. And at that stage, people are stretched out. But I wasn't just running past people. I was, overtaking people with pace. It was almost like I'd started the race late. And people were looking over their shoulders. They're like, wow, like, how's this guy got so much energy? And I didn't write my split times down on my arm. So I knew I had a lot of time to make up. But I knew I was feeling amazing and I knew I was overtaking a lot of people. So I was like, I can't feel this good, be running this fast in the last 17 and not break 2:20. So at that stage, I really started believing. I was like, 2:20s in the bag, just keep up these splits. My watch was beeping, 3:11, 3:12s. And your GPS is always a little bit lenient. I knew it was going to be close, but I was like, there's no ways I can't. And I hit a little bit of a wobble between sort of 35 to 40. And then I think, I was still under 2:20 pace for that split, but I didn't realize how much time I actually had to make up. And then at 40Ks, I was like, okay, you need to full send it to the end. I think I had a peep at my watch and I didn't look down and I just absolutely went for it, believing that I was going to do it. And my last 2K splits from the race was my fastest 2K splits. And the first time that I realized in that whole race that I wasn't doing it was when you go under Brandenburg Gates. It's 352 meters to go. And I needed, I think, I knew I could do it in about 60 seconds at the pace that I was running. And my watch said 72 seconds or something. My watch said like, I only had 48 seconds to do it in. So I was like, it's impossible. I can't do it in 48 seconds. But I was like, but you can't give up either. So I gave it absolutely all I could. Obviously, that clock was in front of me ticking and I could see it was ticking faster than I could.
Could you see the 2:19 at the time?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah.
So you can see the clock with 2:19. You can probably see it from 2:19:40. It's a massive clock. And you're just thinking, I'm not going to get
there. You just hope time
slows
down
down
for you.
And you're sprinting and your form's dropping and you're thinking, that clock's seconds are just going too quick, but you don't want to give up. You've come across this whole journey believing that this is the day. And it went, 220, 220.01, 220.02. And then I've actually got a finishing picture of me crossing the line, I think at 220.06, but the official time's always a little bit different.
So 220.08.
So 220.08 was my official time. And that must
have been a hard pill to swallow. 8 seconds.
That was super hard from the point of view that I believed for so long in the race, and I chased it down from 17 to go. I went solo, and I just, if you look at my tactics for the day, they probably weren't the best. And if I had a few more people to work with, or if I had gone earlier, it might have been a different story. But because I truly believed, and then it didn't happen, and that much effort went into it, I kind of just, it was like some sort of sick joke, because I'd done a 51-second PB, which is incredible, and the margins are fine, so I should be happy with that. But 220.08, are you joking? So yeah, it was probably harder to take than I was happy for the performance. But a part of me was happy because it was a PB. So yeah, bittersweet moment, but very hard that it came down to 9 seconds over 42.2 Ks.
What goes through your mind, knowing that you're so close, but you still haven't yet achieved this dream? Are you like, do you say, well, I'll just have to go again, I'll do it next year? Was that just the mentality?
Sure. It's not even an option. It's like, okay, you're closer. You just got to, you improve by 51 seconds. You've got 9 seconds to go.
And you just think of all the positives, right? Because the time is coming down.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a strong year for you. 2 marathons, 2 220s.
Yeah.
It got faster, 2 PBs.
Exactly. So, it's a hard one to take, but in a way that like you learn, like I found over the years that if you hit your targets or if you hit a PB, it's incredible, but sometimes just missing it makes you so hungry. It like lights up this fire and unleashes this demon or lion inside of you that you just like, I need to do what it takes. I need to do what it takes to go and break that 220. And every time you're doing a session, you're thinking 9 seconds. Do you feel like doing a bit extra? 9 seconds. Like it gets you out the door. So yeah, it was super hard to take, but nothing's more motivational than just missing your PB or your goal.
Just to save time, I want to kind of bunch these other marathons up, because in 2023, Seville, you ran a 2:21.17, and then the same year you went back to Berlin in a 2:22.12. Each of those marathons got progressively slower. The times were going in the wrong direction. And then in 2024, earlier this year in Manchester, a 2:22.40, 3 consecutive marathons, all with the times going in the wrong direction. And we talked about the 2 you ran in 2022, which was blistering fast, the form of your life. The following 3 marathons weren't going well. What was going through your mind there?
Yeah, you know what? It was hard for me because I'd come so close, and every time I believed I could do it, and then falling short, but then heading in the wrong direction was tough. I mean, if I break down very quickly, like Seville, I went through halfway 68 low, so tracking for a 2:16, feeling like I could do it at the time, blowing in that last 12 Ks, finishing in 2:21. Then Berlin, I feel like I probably wasn't in the shape I needed to be in, and running 2:22.12, it's probably a sign of where I was at that point in time. And then Manchester, that was a real eye opener for me, because that was the first time sub 220 was never really on the cards. Like I went through halfway slower, but then I couldn't pick it up second half, whereas in the previous builds, I had it in my hands until the last 5 Ks, and it just slipped out every time. It just slipped out. Whereas the Manchester one was like, whoa, it was never in my hands from the start type thing. And that's when I was like, if I don't change something, then I'm never ever going to break 220, and I'm going to, go to my grave with 2:20.08, and I just need to accept that, which didn't go down well with me. And us runners are stubborn. We don't want to accept that stuff. So yeah, I had to do some serious soul searching, because you're obviously not getting younger. I've got 2 kids now at this point in time, a 4-year-old or 3-year-old at that point, and a 1-year-old. And with broken sleep and the margins being so fine, like, and I always put family first. It was a reality that actually sub 220 may never happen.
And there are people, I know people as well who have said to me since, and obviously since you now broke sub 220, it's like, you know what, I just thought he was not going to do it. He tried, he had a great year in 2022. That was his peak. And, sometimes you just got to accept where your ceiling is and just be happy with that, a remarkable time. And obviously since then you've knocked it out of the park. But there must have been a lot of that negativity coming through to you online as well, when you're posting these times and they're getting slower and people saying you just don't have it in you.
You know what? I got told by a few running coaches that, you've peaked and it's just not going to happen. And I think that's the one way to get someone, or especially me, to do something, is to say that you've peaked. It's just not going to happen. It's like, don't tell me I can't do it. Like, I'm going to make a point to prove to you that I can, type thing. But you know what? People are incredible. Even though my times were getting slower, there was a lot of people still believing. I think maybe they wanted to get me to believe, and they thought, let's try and instill belief into this guy, but it was working. And, there was a lot of like positivity to it. And I feel like in a weird way that, I was documenting on my YouTube channel all these 8 to 10 week builds, and it was relentless. It's not like you just do a race and you go again. And having failed 6 times now, it's like odds are probably against you. You've tried 6 times, you've come very close. It's been phenomenally consistent. You're running 220s and 222s, which is amazing, but you're heading in the wrong direction. You're not quite there. So yeah, I feel like there was definitely a lot of support from people wanting me to do it, but deep down inside, people probably did think that I'd peaked at that stage.
How far would you be willing to take this to achieve the 220, the sub 220? How far were you willing to go? And when, a bit like when you launched into your kind of run coaching career, you said, I'm going to give it a year and then see, and if it's going to be a failure, then I'll have to come, rethink things. Was this going through your mind? It's like, maybe I'll just have to accept?
Yes and no. Before I ran Manchester, in my mind, I had no doubts. It was a matter of time before I broke 220. After Manchester, I started getting doubts, which I'd never, ever, ever had before. And that was not nice. And I think a lot of people go through that, where you start doubting yourself. And I was like, I needed to get myself into a position to get the self-doubt out. So I thought, do you know what? The reason why I'm running the way I am is because life's getting crazier and crazier and crazier in a good way. Like, business will always come first. It puts a roof over my head, my family's head, food on the table and stuff like that. Content's taking time. It's part of my business. Running good times is great, but the margins are tight, and unless you do something different, those good times are going to be fairly good, but they're not going to improve. So I actually made a conscious decision once I moved to Winchester 7 months ago to prioritize training and sacrifice a little bit on the business front. I'm not prepared to sacrifice on the family side, let's say. So yes, I've actually put less hours into my business than I was before. So it's still growing, but at a slightly slower rate. And that's something that I had to make a conscious decision of and block out time to get in my runner's mobility, those routines, all those little bits that add up. Otherwise, it's simple. I was just never going to move forward, and I was going to go to my grave having not broken a 220.
What other things in your lifestyle did you look at to try and find these marginal gains?
So I knew moving to Winchester, training was going to be a lot harder. I'd obviously been in London before and doing a lot of my training in Battersea Park. And Battersea Park, it's like a runner's paradise. It's great. It's blocked off to traffic. You can hit good consistency, but you almost live under a false sense of security because it's so quick. You need to be averaging way under or a little bit under sub 220 shape there, because Berlin's quick, but it's not even as quick as Battersea. So I felt like going to Winchester, it's going to be a lot harder. The hills there are a lot tougher. My workout loop, you're running through 2 gates where sometimes you got to, stop, go through the gates type thing. So it's unsettling, and all that stuff was making me stronger, and I could feel it. And I was prioritizing, better sleep, better nutrition, getting in my daily routine, which I had lost sight of for the past couple of years. And all those bits and pieces add up a lot at the end of the day.
What kind of things were you doing with your nutrition?
So I was just sort of trying to keep things a little bit cleaner. So avoid, you have to live life and eat a few cheat meals, but avoid like fried food and sugary stuff. Being a bit more disciplined. Before that, I would binge on yogurt, peanut butter, oats honey, which is not unhealthy, but when you're binging on it all the time, like I didn't actually need it. It was just part of my routine, which is why I was doing it. So yeah, to cut that out of my routine was not easy, but you know, at the same time, I think I realized that sub 220 means more to me than this. So, you know, let's stop binging and be more disciplined.
Okay, so 2024 Berlin Marathon, you're in the elite field, you're in the right starting pen, you're at the front, getting a good position to set off on a race that you've run many times, and your course is a course PBs, your actual PB of a 2:20:08, and you set off and you cross the halfway point at 70:14. Which I think you mentioned that you did a 70:16 the year before. So you're in the similar kind of territory as your 2:20:08. Talk us through that second half.
So that's exactly it. You know what? Ideally, and I said on my socials before that I wanted to go through halfway a little bit faster. I wanted to be under sub 220 pace the whole way and not get over. But I didn't want to be under by much because I wanted to give myself the best chance and not burn matches. But, you know, you got to sort of like play onto the condition of race day. So there was a big, massive pack, the biggest pack I've been in an international marathon at that sort of, you know, in my latter years, let's say. And it was paced by Kenyan Kipruto, and he was pacing two ladies to a sub 220. Well, they were looking for a sub 220. His first job is to try and get them under 220, but his second job is to not leave the ladies. Like if they are slowing down, look after the ladies type thing. So that pack that I was in at Berlin was probably about 30 people big. It was huge. And when the margins are tight, when you run in a pack, you know, it gives you 1 to 2 seconds a K advantage, let's say, or drops your heartbeat by 1 or 2 beats per minute, which is massive at the end of the day, especially when the margins are so tight. So I made a conscious decision that even though this pack, it's going through halfway a little bit slower than what I want, I'm getting so much benefit by saving my matches for when I make the break. So I kept on trying to, like, you know, push the boundaries a little bit and chat to him and being like, we're slowing down, like, you know, can you pick it up? But ultimately his job was there to protect the ladies. And, you know, I was like, I went at the water points, they were nightmares because there's 30 people, you know, rushing for water. So I was like, you're getting clipped all the time. You really have to focus a lot. And, you know, thankfully I had a sub-liter entry, so I had my own drinks en route. But whenever there was a water point, I'd peel off the front, go to the front, have my drink, and then, you know, tuck back in because I was like, let's not risk it. Like, I can't try and grab my bottle through all these people saying it's going to go wrong. So yeah, I went through halfway in 70:14, feeling really strong. But once again, like, you know, to put in a negative split, you want to and you want to believe, but in reality, you know, it's hard. So I did feel good, but I was like, I felt good 2 years ago and it slipped me type thing. So I stayed in the pack all the way until probably about the 30K mark. And at the 30K mark, once again, we had slowed a little bit, but I felt really, really good. And I felt like it's weird because it was such a risky way to run the race, to leave a chunk out there at the end, wanting it so bad. I just thought everything I've done up until this point has prepared me for this last 12Ks. Like every failed attempt, every time you've come so close, every time you've tasted it, like it's for these 12Ks right here. And then boom, I made my break at 30, probably having to make up about 45, 50 seconds at the time.
This time you had your splits written on your...
This time I had the splits written down on my arm.
You knew exactly where you need to be at every kilometer
So at 30Ks I looked and I was a lot over my split than what I'd wanted to be by maybe 40 or 50 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a lot to make up. And I thought, now's my time. Okay, I'm feeling really strong, but it's a lot of time to make up. So I dropped my pace from, it was probably about 321s to about, my splits for that 5K stretch, I think was 310s. So I increased by 11 seconds a K. And pretty much from K30 to 35, I looked at the splits on my arm and I only had 10 seconds to make up. And I was like, this is going to happen. You know, this is going to happen. I can, that was the coolest point for me. And I get shivers when I think of this because I'm like, I don't need to run as fast as I'm running now. And I will still break 220. But I was like feeling strong, but I was like, at the same time, you know, don't stuff this up. This is your chance. And then I got to, you know, the 40K mark, the 41K mark with, you know, like 1.2Ks to go. And I think that's the first time that I realized, actually, I know I've got this in the bank. And, you know, the last kilometer came, and then I started, because it had meant so much to me. And, you know, I'd done 290 kilometers of racing, believing that I could do it. Finally, it coming true was like, it seemed so surreal that I started choking up and getting emotional.
This is before you finished.
This is before I finished within my last kilometer.
Right. And you need yourself to hold your, pull yourself together. You still need to get it.
Exactly, for sure.
It's not a guarantee yet.
So, you know, I didn't know that I had 15 seconds in the bank. I knew I maybe had a few, but your brain's also not working that well at that stage of the race. And I knew that if I choke up a lot, like, I'm going to stuff this up type thing. So I was like, get your stuff together, Nick, like really focus here. And I managed to pull myself towards myself. And I went under Brandenburg Gate, and I saw that clock and it said 2:19, but it said 2:19 low at the time, like 10 or 15. And I was like, haha, today I'm beating that clock. It's not ticking faster. And because I'd gone through everything I had before that point, it just made it so much more special. So yeah, I really soaked up that finishing stretch, and, you know, to finally cross that line after, you know, what I'd been through and pouring my heart and soul and just eat, breathe, sleeping it for 3 years to get it. I just lay down to the side and just broke down. Like, I just couldn't contain my emotion. And yeah, it was so surreal. You know, so many sub-elites and just runners in general were so happy for me. And it was such a sweet moment. And you know what? When you finish a race, you pull off to the side, and often the marshals try and get you through the finishing area because people are coming through. And I think the marshals there could see how much it meant to me, and they just left me and let me have my 5 minutes of just saying it up on the side. So yeah, what a feeling. And that feeling of satisfaction that I felt then, which is still very fresh, would not have felt nearly as sweet had I not come so close in the past. So, you know, every failed attempt, let's say, had built me up to feeling how I did when I crossed that line that day.
It must have been a very emotional time, thinking back to all the times when you thought you could achieve it and you didn't. And then in the last year, when the times were going in the wrong direction, you started to even doubt yourself, on top of all the other doubts that other people in your running community and online had about you. So how did it feel knowing that you had delivered on a promise that you'd made not only to yourself, but to the rest of the world, putting it out there, saying that I believe I can do this. Just give me a few more attempts and I will get it. I'll figure it out eventually. And when I do, it will be the most worthwhile achievement of my entire life.
Yeah. You know what? Like, so overwhelming in a way that I did not expect, you know, my world to blow up the way it did after that. I always try and get back to people, you know, within a couple of days. That time I couldn't. It took me, you know, weeks to clear my phone. And I think I didn't realize the power it had for a lot of people, because a lot of people had invested in the journey. I knew that I'd get a lot of support, but I didn't realize how personal a lot of runners took it out there. And I think all you have to do is go, you know, back on the YouTube video that I released, and there's, you know, almost 1,000 comments, and it's not just well done. It's like people sharing their massively, you know, taking the time to write out how much this meant to them in their personal life. And, you know, a lot of people, I think, lived through my journey and seeing me relentlessly try time and time again and getting over that line on something that's incredibly tough for me, like, helped inspire them and give them belief that they can go out and do stuff in their worlds type thing. So that was absolutely incredible. Like, I never felt the pressure of putting myself out there. What if I don't do it? You know, what are people going to think? Like, I've always done it to try and be the best me that I can be. And if it helps a lot of people on the way, incredible. And that's what it's done. And it's just the domino effect it's had on other people. And, you know, I did parkrun on the weekend, and people are coming up to me asking for selfies, saying that they cannot believe I got over the line, and it's been so incredible about them, and their friends were chatting about it, and just the effect it's had, you know, for my running network has been incredible.
And in your YouTube video, which is a fantastic video, really emotional video, you shared an image that your wife had filmed herself seeing your result time come in, and just seeing her face, and just how she knew how much it meant to you and all the sacrifices you had made. That was a really emotional point when I watched it. But also you revealed something at the end that I didn't really know about you, and we've not talked about this, but you said, one of the things that people always have a reason for running. And what's your reason?
Yeah. Probably quite tough for me to talk about in a way. It's not something I talk about fairly often, because in a way I don't really like people, feeling sorry for you or anything. But so, to be completely honest, my main reason for running is because I lost both my parents fairly young. So I lost my mom to brain cancer when I was 3 years old. So she had brain cancer before I was born, actually. So long story short, but she was told to have an abortion because there was a high chance that I would come out with, something. She was riddled with cancer, and she was stubborn enough to say no. And thankfully I turned out normal, I hope. That I obviously lost my mom very young when I was 3. And thankfully, my stepmom came into my life a couple of years later, and I call her my mom now, and we got a really nice relationship, which was great. But then, I lost my dad when I was 17 years old to the exact same brain tumor, which, is extremely rare. I think chances of that are, 1 to a million or whatever the case is. It's a very rare type of brain tumor. I feel like that sort of made me lean on a lot of people, and I've had such an incredible support structure my whole life, from my boarding school friends to family and people around me. And I feel like I didn't deal with a lot of it at the time. I sort of, you block it out. And I feel like when I run, I get to connect with not them in a way, but I get to process it, and, I feel like make them proud and stuff like that. So it's not the sole reason why I run, but a massive motivating factor, and something I hold close to my heart. So when I'm, struggling those last few bits, or struggling with motivation and stuff, that's definitely a factor that gets me through.
And I know that family is a big part of your life. You've mentioned you've got 2 kids, and the fact that you've been able to conquer the 2:20 marathon time, whilst also fathering 2 young children. I mean, anyone who has young children will know how much hard work that is just to figure out their own lives, let alone your own. Going forward now into this new era of your running, where you kind of, sky's the limit almost, because you've been able to conquer and smash these ceilings. But also with a growing family, which is a big part of your life, where do your kind of running aims and goals now fit?
Yeah, so family will always come first for me, no matter what. I make that quite clear on my socials. And my 2 little girls they're 4 and 1, and they're only young ones. So I want to be there for them as much as possible. And, I don't want to look back one day and say I missed out on their, young years by chasing a time. Like, having a time goal is important, but it's not the be all and end all. Having said that, I truly believe that my best years are ahead of me. I feel like I'm in a really good routine. I've been in Winchester for 7-8 months now, and I've leveled up, and I feel like, what could the next, couple of years do if I keep that with that routine and really focus, a lot to, as much as I can, to training. So, now that I've broken 220, it's like, what next? And breaking 220 was incredible, but obviously it comes with bigger post-marathon depression than ever before, because you hit this height, and, I'd been thinking about it for 3 years, and that obsession of sub 220 is no longer there. But I think one thing that I really want to do is knock off an hour from my first marathon to my, most recent, or get there eventually. So my first marathon was 3 hours 17. So my goal for next year, I might get it next year. It might take me another year, who knows? But we'll, get there or die trying. And that's to try and run a 2:17 something. So had I known when I first started, I probably would have done it 3:18 and made it a bit easier. But that's something that I really want to aim for. So, 2:17 going forward. I'm racing London Marathon next year. I don't know if I'll do it there, but I'll certainly try. If I can PB or run 2:18, I think that would be a phenomenal successful result. And then I'm racing Valencia in December next year, which is super fast these days. And a lot of the elite, sub-elites target that. So I think that would really be a good opportunity for me.
You've mentioned about how difficult it is to conquer, an extra an extra minute of time as you get closer and closer to 2 hours. So I know that's going to be a very, very hard goal to achieve, but I fully believe that if anyone can do it, Nick Bester can. So I wish you all the luck in the world on that next stage or next journey into marathoning. But I know that you've got such a great balance in your world of running with family, with your business. And, you now own the sub 220. You've got that tattooed on your body now. And that will forever be your biggest story. And anything else you can get from now on, it's just going to be the sprinkling on top. I truly believe that. And you've already proved yourself to be a truly committed and determined person that's not going to let any kind of adversity get in your way to achieving a goal. So whatever happens, I just wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like I said, anything I achieve from here on in is a bonus. But having said that, there's nothing to lose. So let's absolutely go for it. And it's so weird because it's just a time. At the end of the day, you don't stand in front of the gates of heaven and get judged on your time, but it's so much more than just a time because it motivates you day in and day out, brings out the best in your running life, in your work life and stuff like that. So yeah, let's keep striving for more. But like I said, if I don't achieve anything more, I'll be satisfied, but we're hungry to keep going. So let's see where it goes. But yeah, it was amazing chatting to you today, Tom. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. And let's boom shakalaka and keep going.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to find out more information about any of the guests, please check out the show notes where you'll also find links to things mentioned in the conversation. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please take a look through the past recordings. There's so many more incredible stories for you to find. And I can't wait for you to enjoy them. Thank you.